My name's Joel, and for as long as I can remember, I've loved sword fighting. I became a longsword instructor because when I was a kid, I wanted to be just like Aragorn or Luke Skywalker. Which got me thinking, what skills would I need to be just like other fictional characters? And just how possible is it to use the skills we see in our favourite fiction in reality? This is Fantasy DIY. Warhammer 40,000 is a tabletop miniatures wargame that has been around since the 80s. It's a massive hobby that spans books, video games, animated series, and even possibly an upcoming Amazon series starring the devilishly handsome Henry Cavill. And yet the whole thing somehow completely passed me by until a few years ago. It started off with me just wanting to know about the lore, and before I knew it, I was painting my first miniature, and now I have a few armies and piles of unpainted plastic. So, for my first episode of Fantasy DIY, I decided to focus on the humans from 40k. Most people know about the terrifying 9-foot-tall super soldiers, the Space Marines, but this video is about the everyday soldiers of the Imperium, the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard are everyday women and men recruited from planets all over the galaxy in order to serve what remains of the Emperor's army. Basically, to cut a very long story short, things aren't going well in humanity's attempts to conquer the galaxy, and we are taking a bit of a beating from all manner of alien and demonic forces. I've decided to try and find out all about the skills required of different members of the Imperial Guard and try them out for myself, to see if I'd have any real chance of giving my life in service of the glorious God Emperor. Unfortunately and obviously, firearms play a very large part in the warfare of the 41st millennium. So ideally, I'd be able to get to grips with that very large part of service in the Imperium of Man. However, I live in England, and without getting into politics, we have slightly different views on firearms. Frankly, we'll be lucky if in a few years we're even allowed to use butter knives. I'm a lover of all things swords, so it seemed only rational to start with the iconic bladed 40k weapon that is the Chainsword. Obviously, the world of 40k is far too grim for people to just hack each other up with real swords. They needed to use a high-powered, serrated-edged motor sword. Now, unfortunately, chainswords don't really exist in real life, but chainsaws do. So I asked my good friend and tree surgeon Carver to give me a hand with this. But before he came by, I figured I'd better get to work making some test dummies. Nurglings are tiny demons of the chaos god Nurgle, god of disease, decay, and destruction. A very cheerful chap. I decided to make my own representation of them from melons. For this craft, you will need a Sharpie, other marker brands are available, 2 toothpicks, a roll of sellotape, some scissors, some green card, and a melon around the shape and size of a Nurgling. First off, take your pen and draw a large set of evil eyes, a wide Nurgling grin. There we are, some lovely Nurgling teeth. You'll then want to colour in the mouth. And there we have our Nurgling face. But what about the horns? Well, just take your card and your scissors. Ask for a grown-up's help if you're too small for sharp scissors. You fold the card, and some of you might want to draw this out, but I'm just going to go freehand. You cut out the shape of a horn. And just like that, we have 2 horns. Next, we take our tape, place a toothpick on each horn, and tape it down. Let's just bring our Nurgling back. And we're just going to stab those horns into position. And there we have it. Our Nurgling friend. Ready to meet the saw. This one is the full-on eviscerator. This one here, isn't it? You've got the actual, that's your longsword equivalent. This one. Then you got your, what would you say that is? Yeah, oh yeah. That's your Messer chainsaw. This is my very good friend Carv. He is a tree surgeon. So yeah. I imagine you don't get much opportunity to talk about these tools in relation to fantasy weapons.
Not in relation to fantasy weapons, no. Normally it's more about you know, what one's good for cutting down trees.
You are aware of the Chainsword.
I am, and I refreshed my memory with Google Images last night. So
fantastic.
I have thoughts, let's say.
So can I pick one of these up, and which one should we start with? I think we've got to start with the one that's probably closest to the one that we see. Oh my God! It's very, very heavy. I imagine you're a bit more used to holding it than I am. Okay, so how does something like this actually work?
The teeth is one thing that is really different in an actual saw to what you tend to see in fantasy sort of images. The teeth are completely different to what you would actually have in real life. And there is a reason why they are like this.
Why are they like this? Because I would have thought, in my head, they would have been jagged this way, so that as they go around, what is this
goes
shape?
around the other way. These ones are moving forwards. They come around, and then these ones are moving backwards.
I see.
So
okay.
Basically, when you're cutting, if you go in from the top on like a false edge, if it was a sword,
sure,
then basically all the sawdust sprays out forward. This has got a 7 horsepower engine, so it's I looked up as well. 50cc moped is between 3 and 9 horsepower. So this is basically a moped engine.
A moped engine,
pretty much,
propelling around that chain.
Yeah. That is more or less a standard saw, although it's on the large side. It's not the biggest saw that still do. It's the second biggest. So it's on the top end.
There's a bigger one than that.
There's a bigger one than that.
This is one of the questions I was going to ask you.
That isn't even the biggest bar that you could have on this saw. So that's a bar.
That's the bit that runs up the centre of the chain, runs around the outside.
And then the chain runs around. So you've got this sprocket, which is a freewheeling sprocket on the end.
Yep.
Basically just like a little cog. And then you've got inside the saw.
Yeah.
You've got another one, which is your drive sprocket. And that's connected to the engine and drives the
just feeds it all the way
yeah,
around. How fast is that spinning?
It's quite high revs. Chainsaws go at really quite high revs. I can't remember offhand what the revolutions per minute
One thing that I'm really, really shocked about with that one, and this is an immediate, just picking the thing up alone answers one of my questions.
Yeah.
Because a space marine is an augmented human being who can presumably lift quite an amount of weight. That's very, very, very heavy.
Compared to a sword.
Yeah. What?
I mean, that is probably the kind of weight that, like, a lot of fantasy swords that you see.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that is overkill for most of that. 95% of the jobs that we do in the UK, that's bigger than you're going to need.
I haven't seen one this large. Most of the ones that I've been looking at have been around that size. So one of my main questions to ask you was going to be, is there a maximum length? And you're telling me this isn't even the longest one.
No. There are bars for the 88, which is, because this is a 661, and I think this 880 is the name of the biggest one now, and that can take a bar which is basically as tall as You know, if you put it,
So you
put it on the ground,
yeah,
the bar is basically like, you know, as tall as us.
I assumed one of the unrealistic components of using it for a sword was the fact that it was just could never get one long enough, but you absolutely can.
You could get you basically looking at, you know, if you think the longest swords, there are chainsaws
You can
as
absolutely
long as
go that wrong.
Yeah. You notice in a lot of the fantasy art is that the teeth they're sort of spiked up, or they're like a cat's claw. The reason why these are completely different to that, so if you notice, they come up and then they do a 90-degree and then they alternate.
Yeah.
So you've got one going up and going this way, one going up and going that way. So that's the tooth.
Yeah.
Which is it's actually sort of known as a chisel, because if you think of like a carpentry chisel, if you think of a carpentry chisel held upside down,
yeah,
that's basically what that is like. It's a micro chisel. As it goes around, it's peeling off a piece of wood, which is getting peeled off and sort of sent down that piece there.
Not to skip ahead in my questions, but would that be less of a problem with things like human tissue as opposed to
right? There is something that you'll notice with these. If you think as this runs through, because they're alternating, you're removing a trench of material. So you're not just so with a sword or a regular knife, you're essentially just splitting it open, or when you cut into material, you're just splitting it open. With this, you're actually digging a trench. So you're removing material, you know, that width of material is getting
You're not just parting it, you're actually
scooping it out and getting rid of it. That is necessary because this is thicker than the leading edge of a blade is.
I assume swinging one of these around and trying to cut through people would be quite dangerous for the user.
I would say that if you were trying to use a chainsaw in combat, it's as dangerous for the person using it as it is for anyone that they might be trying to attack.
Right. Why don't chainsaws have a back cover like the ones that you see depicted in 40K?
If you've got anything just protruding on the side of this blade here, which is wider than the chain itself, that instantly stops you from being able to bore in any deeper. So if their teeth are 2 inches long, and then they kind of the bar gets wider, they would only ever be able to go in as deep as their teeth are on their chain.
You have to have scoops that are the correct weight to the blade that's coming behind it.
And if you notice, these actually bend outwards. So the widest section of this is the chain.
The ones in 40K are even they're especially fat.
They're especially fat, and then also what you tend to see in 40K is they have like a shroud over part of it.
I was going to ask
so that the teeth come out from inside this shroud, and then but that means that the shroud has to be a lot wider. If you imagine I'm cutting into the tree, this whole section disappears into the tree.
So a cover would completely would go back to the problem that you're talking about, where you can't. Because it has to be following in line with the blades.
There we go. This is basically where all the excess material comes pouring out. Right. This is another thing which is always neglected on those you know, fantasy designs, particularly the Warhammer ones.
Sure.
There's never this trench here to get rid of all the excess material.
I see.
So if you don't have that,
immediately spits out.
Yeah, right. So that spits out, and you've got this little rubber bit here, so basically it just helps sort of fire all the sawdust out that way. I see. If you don't have that, then this whole area in here will just get gummed up with whatever you're cutting through.
This may be a ridiculous question, because we're sort of asking ridiculous questions here today.
That's the point of it.
Yeah, that is. People in the 40K universe wear armor.
Yes. Well, that was one of the things that I was
through.
Well, that's one of the things that I was thinking. They do a chainsaw, which is it's one very much like this.
Right.
which is adapted for cutting through masonry.
Right.
So it's got diamond sort of cutting
Wow.
blades on it.
Okay,
They're
very expensive
Yeah,
blades.
I think they're like £300.
So it would have also been expensive
They're-
to kit out an Imperial Guard army
Yeah.
with chainswords.
Well, I imagine that
presumably-
the armor is quite expensive
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Is it feasible that with a
Well,
diamond-edged one, then you would be able to cut
that
through
you could
thin plate?
Possibly, yeah. I think you actually, I will go through it. It messes up the saws, and we pretty much have to, it blunts them straight away.
Of course.
But we go through metal on a semi-regular basis with these.
Why?
Because people put nails into trees, and trees grow around
Right.
like posts and things, and
Okay.
and you end up with bits of metal inside a tree, and you don't know it's there until suddenly.
Do you
find
feel a substantial difference when you're trying to make your way
you'll feel a
through?
hard thing, and
Right.
then it will suddenly go sort of normal again.
Right.
And then very often you'll think, I probably just hit something, because also the saw dulls quite quickly.
Okay.
I've gone through pieces of metal as thick as that bolt before.
Everything we've been talking about up to this point has been around what they are used for.
In reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, how much of all of these answers change if the thing that you're cutting through isn't as tough as a tree, but is, say, a lot closer to a human being? I'm going to ask you a fairly grim question to start with. How have you been injured yourself? Have you seen...
I haven't been injured myself.
Right.
Touch wood.
Yes.
It's something which unfortunately does happen. I know several people who have been injured.
Right.
And all of the injuries that I know are all injuries that have occurred. The person using the saw has injured themselves. So it's not a case of the saw injuring somebody else. Most of the time it's something called kickback. The most dangerous part of this saw, or of any chainsaw really, is this top quarter of the nose. So this is the nose of the bar, and then the top quarter here is the most dangerous part.
Why would that be?
Because as the chain comes around, it's bending down, and if you hit something on that edge, if you think about the torque that's involved, what's it going to do?
Pull.
It basically just wants to flick this way. And if you're not careful, particularly if you've got something powerful like this, what happens is you make contact, and then it flicks out, and then it comes back at you.
Wow.
So the two...
Shame you can't put one of those Warhammer back covers on then. Did they scare you when you started?
There was healthy respect, and I think I've never lost respect for the saw. No. Which is part of the reason why you don't end up getting injured.
The injuries that you have known about, are they mainly from that then, that kickback?
Two of them were from kickback, and one of them had a little scar on his chin, but he also had a scar down on his chest.
Wow.
And he was quite proud of the fact that he's got an X-ray, which, that trench I was telling you about?
Yes.
He's got an X-ray which shows that trench in his rib cage. Okay. Because, he was sawing, it just flipped back, caught his chin, and then buried itself in his chest. And then the other guy, whose nickname was the Kurgan, because he's got a slash mark on his neck, because he actually went into his neck.
This is a fairly obvious question, I think, but I'm assuming they cut through human beings with absolutely no trouble whatsoever.
But the other thing that you'll notice is that nearly all of the injuries that I'm talking about, when it actually made contact with the human body, it was what's known as a dying chain. So they had let go of the trigger.
Right.
And the chain was slowing down. So it wasn't actually so it was just what was left, the energy that was left in the chain spinning round. And then you've got
if it was on full blast, then
if it was on full blast, then you'd go through very quickly. Why you would do that, I don't know.
Of course. But if it was an enemy,
yeah, then you could get through
a chaos bad guy,
if you needed to.
You're gonna have.
But I mean that's one of the things that I was thinking about. You talked about armor. That's one of the possible reasons why you might want to have a chainsaw if you're going up against armor, then because saws are always used to do, to go through hard material.
Right.
So you don't really use a saw for, I can't think of any situation where a saw is used to go through soft material. They're always going through hard material.
Right.
And armor is hard.
Yes.
So, the idea of using a chainsaw to cut through armor isn't completely stupid. It's always hard material.
Yep.
It's also always stationary material. Because if you think of a handsaw where you're going backwards and forwards,
of course,
you
I
have
understand
to be,
what you're saying. The pressure is going to
right. And even with this, even though this goes around really quickly, if you tried to, sort of pick it up and just kind of hit
swing,
with it, just swing with it, then it's going to do damage, but it's not going to do the same. It's not going to have the same effect as holding it against and holding pressure.
Of course, even if it wasn't a problem that we have blades that are too wide. Sorry, we have swords that are too wide for the blades.
Yeah.
And
or bars that are too wide for
yes,
bars that are wider than the blade.
So even if that wasn't a problem,
and
even if the weight is frankly a nightmare, even if that wasn't a problem, you couldn't swing one around and do optimal damage to.
No,
it's not going to cleave.
Certainly not if you're trying to attack something with armor on.
Right.
If you're attacking something with armor, then you need to be holding it against whatever you're cutting for it to have any real effect. If you're just going up against bare flesh
or melons,
then you're gonna be able to do some damage just with the lightest of touches. But you could do that with a normal sword, and it weighs less. It's cheaper to manufacture.
Right.
But
intimidating. Maybe that's what they were going for.
That is the one thing that I was thinking, is that the intimidation factor on a saw is if I've got this running and I'm coming at you, even if I'm just walking towards you,
that's going to do the job.
You're probably not going to walk towards me. You're probably going to walk away. If you were swinging a baseball bat at me, then your reach would probably be at least as good as mine with this saw.
Yes.
But you're a lot more agile than I am, because I can hold this out, but I can't do it for too long. But if you hit the side of the saw or the bar with a baseball bat, you're going to damage it.
Right.
And you'll probably quickly, like I was about to say earlier, once you knock the chain off of this, or even snap the chain, because these chains do snap occasionally. Once that chain comes flying off, you've got this.
Right.
That's not really going to do very much.
Overall, does not make for a good choice of weapon.
I wouldn't have thought so, no.
Sword. It became increasingly clear while talking to Carv that I may not be able to swing around a high-powered chainsword without killing myself. But there was maybe something else I owned that I could use. Luckily for us, there is another trusty weapon in the Warhammer universe. Something that can be relied on to be used, even if chainsaws are too dangerous in real life. And that is, if I can actually unfold it, the trusty shovel. Oh yes. Time to end some other men's lives the right way. That's right. The trusty shovel. Something of a meme in the 40K universe. The death corpse of Krieg will run triumphantly and fearlessly headfirst into battle with nothing but a shovel at their side. So shovels presumably are a little bit more simple. Oh! Yeah.
Surprisingly good, actually.
Yeah, I know, right? That's pretty efficient killer.
That's how it's done.
So, we know they can cut, but how well do they fare in real life against something like a longsword? Now, for my first set of tries, I did take quite the beating. I think it's because, in truth, I was completely shitting my pants. Shovels really do not have the reach advantage, so trying to play it safe was not working. When I tried again, I decided to ditch that method and opt for an all-out charge, which worked a little better. But I decided I still needed to try using a shovel against ranged weaponry, which, it's safe to say, it definitely doesn't do well against. Special thanks to Craig here for shooting me in the arse. The next tool used by the Imperium is going to be a little bit harder to try out in real life. The psychic powers used by the appropriately named Psykers. Psykers have a wide variety of abilities provided to them via their connection to the warp. The warp, again, very long story short, is a hellscape dimension of psychic energy, wherein the Chaos Gods, the true enemies of mankind, reign. The closest real-world equivalent that we have to Psykers is obviously Psychics. So there was really only one option. This is a bit of an odd one. I'm making a I run a YouTube channel, and I'm looking to make a video about a fantasy series. And in the fantasy series, there's a lot of psychic characters, and so I'm not actually calling about reading or anything, but I decided to go along and interview a psychic to try and get the lowdown on what one can hope to accomplish with psychic powers in real life. And basically, I'll just, if possible, ask you a bunch of questions about the series, and yeah? Oh, brilliant. Take care. Bye-bye. It wasn't easy to try and find someone willing to talk to me, what with the unusual proposition I had on offer. But after a little bit of a struggle, we were very happy to find the lovely Donna, and she was more than happy to answer many of my ridiculous questions. Twice. The first time I interviewed her, I forgot to turn on the mics.
Right, my name's Donna. I'm a psychic medium, but I'm also a counsellor. So I put the two together.
Right. Mm-hmm. And what does... is a medium the same as a psychic? No,
a medium's a little bit different. A psychic will read cards and they'll look into future. So okay. they'll read information from the cards and runes. There's all types of tools you can have, but a medium actually connects to a higher dimension. So what they do is they connect to something higher than them. Are these dimensions made up of the spirits of people? Well, yeah, you've got like different dimensions as to, because when we come into the world, we're, say, reincarnated. So when I went to Greece, like about 20 years ago, I went to the top of Delphi, and it's where the first clairvoyants were. And I had a feeling I'd been there before. And when I sat there, I cried for about an hour, and I felt the energy so strong. And then when I looked into it, it was like where the first clairvoyants were, and they predicted wars.
Is a clairvoyant different to a medium?
Clairvoyant is someone who can see spirit. So you've got clairvoyant who sees spirit. You've got clairsentient who hears it.
Sees spirit as in amongst?
As a person standing next to them.
Do both of those as well then?
Yeah.
Medium, psychic and clairvoyant?
All of it. Yeah,
okay.
everything.
And how long have you been able to do?
So, like I said, my first experience, well, like I said, I fell off a wall and I hit my third eye. So I feel like what that did was that triggered something. I don't know whether it triggered something in my brain to have the ability. It opened my eyes to everything. It was like it gave me belief. It was like, I really do believe. It's like nothing you can say to me will take that belief away.
Do you think it's more natural state for human beings than to be more connected with?
It's interesting you say that. I think it's interesting. That's a really good question, because I feel like it feels unnatural for us to be like that because we're not programmed. But actually, when you are in fifth dimension, you feel it. It's just unconditional love. It's like being on drugs. Not that I know what drugs is. Well, I
yes,
do. But
you do.
Yeah, I do.
Do you feel happier there?
Absolutely.
In the fifth dimension?
Yeah.
How do you access that now? Is it what you're accessing every time you do readings and stuff?
It's through meditation. So you have to allow yourself. It's discipline.
Is it a shape? Is it a place? Does it have an appearance? Or is it like?
It's like explaining space. I mean, I don't know everything. I mean, I can't physically know everything. But it's energy. It's really just like energy and source. And it's very hard for us to, it's for us to for humans to process that is quite would be a struggle for them.
It sounds
we're not
an awful lot like the warp from what
does it
from 40K.
That's exciting.
Yeah, which is when you pass, this spirit or soul or of living things would go there, and it actually does provide physical energy. It's used for things. Did you improve over time? So you've sort of answered that there.
Yeah.
Is it training or is it just?
Well, like you asked the question, like, are people born with it? And, I do feel like people are born with a gift. Like, some people are great singers, aren't they? But people can sing. Everyone can sing. But if you want to be a great...
God, I can't.
Well, no, I don't want to hear you either.
Sure?
No, thanks.
After we're done here...
It's all right, though.
I'll have a little sing song.
It's all right, though.
So everything you do has gotten easier over time?
Because I've worked hard, because I've aligned myself. We call soul alignment. Because I've physically aligned myself and done the work.
That sort of leads nicely into my next question.
Go on then.
Where do you think above all of that, where these powers come from?
Well,
is it a higher power or?
Yeah, I believe it's universal energy. It's something far higher than we are, but we choose not to connect to it. It's just like a source of information and energy that we choose not to connect to.
How do you know that it's good or bad, or does it not really work in a moral way?
Well,
like that?
Because
are there bad things in the fifth, fourth
there
dimension,
are.
fifth
well,
dimension?
Again, there's good and bad with everything. You've always got good, bad, dark, light. You've always got those things happening in life. So nothing's ever 100% great. Nothing's ever really positive, because that wouldn't be life. So we've got to have good and bad.
So just as there is here, both of those forces.
There is forces on the other side. Oh yeah, much more powerful than what we even know.
It's not all candy floss and
absolutely not
rainbows.
Absolutely not.
Oh no.
No, but you love that.
Yeah.
You love this.
Yeah, we like a little bit of grim, don't we?
Yeah. Sure. I've seen myself in Egypt, but I don't think I was very nice there, because, like I said, I cut heads off and I could see them rolling. So I don't know how great of a person I was then.
I'm glad
because
we've met you on this one.
Yes.
Do you have to believe in all of these things in order for them to work?
Yeah. Good question again. You have to have belief.
Is there anything on that other side that could be referred to as demons?
Yeah, I've had clients here who are possessed, or they've had dark entities and dark spirits around them. That's due to depression, negative behaviour, addictions, drugs, paranoia.
So human-like emotions feed that stuff?
They do. It's like you've got murderers on the planet and good people, haven't you? You've got the same you've got the same on the other side.
So you think a lot of negative forces are fed to people?
Well, they can feed from if you're in a depressed state, you're negative and your vibration's low, then that negative can feed into you.
Can psychics be more readily corrupted by those things? Because
if you're working in darkness, yes, they have voodoo dolls and they cast spells and they do black magic. You're sort of in some ways, and Ouija boards and stuff like that.
Right.
It's like you're bringing it in.
Right.
So you're
opening the door.
You're opening the door to it in some ways.
So a bit like how you've leaned into the nicer side of things. If you lean into the other side,
you're going to get
it can
darkness.
Get out of hand that way
completely.
As well.
You have to be so controlled around it.
Can you implant ideas? Can you make somebody do something that they don't want to do?
I don't feel I would.
But would is different.
Mm.
Could you will someone to do something?
Possibly, yeah. But it would have to be with good intentions.
Why?
Because I come
for you
from
it would, yeah.
I come from a good place, and I would never
suggest
anything
to do something that wouldn't be good for them.
No, definitely
no. But it's feasible that somebody who had ill intent
could. Oh, completely. Right. Yeah.
Telepathy. Talking communicating to someone.
I've experienced telepathy. It can work, but
it's not like having a phone line.
No, but for me, it could work telepathy with humans, because I remember me and my friend used to joke around, and I'd say, think of something in your brain, and then we'd both think of a spoon or something. Right. If you've got a really close connection. But when you're dealing with people on a one-to-one basis, I'm not connecting to the brain or anything.
Right.
I'm connecting to something else.
You don't communicate via seance or channeling. And are they different?
Seance is where you sit in a group and you can hold hands and you can ask for, it's a bit like a Ouija board, you can ask for spirit to come in the room. So you say, is anybody there? And then spirit comes into the room, but you can attract dark.
Are you just plucking at the air when
you do who's around the so anyone who's connected to the people. Whereas channeling is when the entity actually comes inside of you.
Wow.
Okay. What I mean, I might try that later. It's when they work through you. So you then go into a deep meditation, and then an entity will come into you, and then you will speak in their language. So they will speak through you. When it happened to me, I was out of it, but apparently an old man was talking and my voice changed.
What, and then you just come back
in the room and I was just like, my name's George. And you're talking differently as well. So you're talking in a way that you wouldn't normally talk.
You're just being used as a puppet. A meat puppet for that other.
Yeah. But you've got to be in a controlled environment with the right people.
Is there something that stops... I know this is going to probably sound mental and you'll probably laugh at me.
Go on.
Something that stops whatever it is taking you over from taking you over for good.
It's a good question, really. That's why...
Or leaving part of them in you.
That's why I feel you've got to be in a controlled... You do that in closed circle where there's people around you that
so as soon as the environment breaks, the connection breaks.
Exactly. But you've got to be with the right people doing it the right way. It's not you. But you have to lose the connection and you have to let them go out of your body, and then you drink a lot of water.
I wouldn't want to bloody let them in.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Everybody has
you have to trust that they are nice. What if they aren't nice?
Very good. Very true.
Never thought sure about you're not walking around with a little bit of demon in you?
I've got a lot of demon.
Telekinesis. Moving things with your mind.
I do believe in that as well. I do believe that that's possible.
Where a person can do it.
I believe in astral projection.
I think I know.
Where you come out of your body. I've experienced that briefly. A lot of people come out of their body and they fly. Or they experience this feeling of not actually being in their physical body. And then they go back to their body. I believe if you have mental control and power, you can move something.
Would that be someone like you who's been around a lot? Is it any way connected?
I feel you'd have to work really hard at that. But that for me is focus and energy. That for me is energy.
Pyrokinesis. Control of fire.
Don't know much about that, if I'm honest.
No?
I don't know a lot about it, so I don't want to sound like I know everything about
No, that sounds like it should be something that the darker ones would do. And this is the last one. We mentioned this briefly. Head exploding. Now, I assume that's not going to be a thing in a literal sense.
Right.
But can you overwhelm someone's mind with an onslaught of psychic stuff, of psychic power or energy?
I believe that some people could.
Again, it's too nasty for you.
For me, no, but I do believe that someone could do that.
Have you never run into anyone really horrible and wanted to use the things that you can do?
Yeah, I have.
But you haven't.
But I wouldn't go that direction. But I have seen people to use it in the wrong way.
Oh, you don't believe that there's any reason to ever use the things that you can do to do it?
Not in darkness. No.
It's just not the done.
Unless there are times where you could fantasize of people that have murdered others or done things. But really again, horrible. I'm still about good.
And would it be corrupting to you even if you were?
Well, it would affect me and my energy. So, you know, if I go into something dark or I do anything in that respect, I'm only affecting my own energy too, aren't I?
This one's going to be a bit interesting.
Go on then. It's always interested with you.
Psychic fights.
Oh.
Could you have a psychic battle with another psychic?
In what way?
Well, I don't know. That's the thing.
I could.
Like, where you were attempting to, I don't know.
People do probably.
Right.
People do.
But again, it's leaning into the...
Well, if they want to attack each other or...
Yeah.
Then yes, that's possible. That would happen. I believe that would happen.
Where people who have those sorts of
I believe that would happen.
Could use it to have a little ruck.
Yeah, I believe that could happen.
Oh my God! Come on, teach me, and then me and you can have a little bit of a sparring match. Can you heighten the abilities that you have using outside stuff? So in a lot of media, it's staffs or canes and things with crystals on top. And does any of this aid, or is it just...
It does help. I mean, like, for example, these crystals will help with the chakras or where somebody's blocked. So if I ask someone what's happening to them, they choose a crystal, I can see where their block is or what's happening within the physical body.
Right, okay.
So crystals can be healing. These things are tools that you use.
But none of them specifically like heighten. It's not like you hold a crystal and you feel more connected to the things that you're trying to read.
Crystals do help. Crystals do help for you to feel more connected. I've got some sage under here as well, which we cleanse. Like, you know, you can use that just to cleanse yourself and cleanse the room.
Oh, right,
and that gets rid of negative energy as well. It gets rid of demons or bad.
That's good then.
So if I go into a house and there's demons or there's dark energies, which there is in some houses, you can cleanse it and you can actually try to get rid of any negativity.
So I wanted to see if there was any way you could tell me how I would go about, or if I could try to do some of the things, something psychic, or access that part of my mind. And I promise I won't use it to explode any heads.
Well, it'd be quite fun to see you explode heads, to be honest. I'll probably be rubbish,
but is there any way
we could give it a go.
I could have a go?
Yeah, the first thing you have to do is believe.
Okay.
You have to believe that there's something beyond you. Yeah, and then the next thing I would suggest is to align yourself, which is something that you come on my courses, or you know, I would work with you on. But that's
what would people start off trying to do?
You still your mind. You get control of your mind. And rather than thinking, you feel. You work from your heart, not your head.
Is it easier to read someone than it is to do a seance or something like that?
I think it's easy just to read someone, just to pick up what you feel. Like I used to test my guides out and say, what colour car is going to be outside Co-op? And they'll say red. And then I drive outside Co-op and there's a red car.
Right.
So the best thing you can do is to go over the bridge and meditate to connect to your guides. You've got to connect.
Okay.
Because you can't just pick up other people. You've got to do the work yourself and be in alignment first before you can ever read anybody else. Yeah?
How long is it going to take me to start exploding heads? Be honest.
I feel like you have the ability to explode heads.
Oh,
definitely.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there we go. Be there in no time.
Yeah.
Then. This is why
It's
I asked
like-
you about the equipment. Because you could have said, oh, yeah, you just go to eBay and you buy this staff and you'll be all right.
No, it doesn't work like that. But
Right,
they want
okay.
consistency. They want you to consistently go
Doesn't
there every
everything?
day.
Doesn't everything? You've got to do all this work before you start exploding heads.
You do. The thing is, it's work. It's not easy, darling.
I want to just be able to move things with my mind and read people, tell them their future right away.
No, you've got some work to do, darling.
After a few failed attempts at guessing car colours and trying to guess what number my wife was thinking of, I realised that I clearly lack the psychic potential to make it as a psyker. All that was left for me to do was to try and put all of these skills into practice.